BTB listeners, thank you so much for checking out today's episode. Listen, if this episode inspires you, do me a favor and take 5 seconds to shoot me a like and subscribe to the podcast. There are several more exciting guests that are in the pipeline, and I just can't thank you enough for your continued support, and let's keep paying the mission forward. Episode 30 of the BTB Project. In today's BTB short, I'm going to be walking you through podcast influences. The BTB Project just started a little over 6 months ago, and in that timeline, it's allowed me to reflect on the influencers and the people who have impacted me the most. As we embark on this journey into the captivating world of podcasting, you'll hear voices of wisdom, inspiration, and knowledge that will guide you through the vast landscape of ideas and perspective. I'm thrilled to introduce you to some of my favorite speakers whose captivating voices and insightful conversations have left an indelible mark in my life, and I know certainly they will impact yours. Let's get into it.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby.
Welcome to the BTB Project, designed to empower listeners to identify their why and to live their best lives no matter the circumstances. My name is Coleman Gerhardt, a former athlete and motivational coach. I've had the opportunity to inspire thousands through my story and help accomplish what they are built to be. You'll be encouraged by each and every episode, and let's get into it.
Yeah, when I blow up, I'ma soar high like Peter Pan. In real life, be living out my dreams. If I'm waking up, it's in a foreign land.
As I've been able to grow the BTB project, it has taken me on a journey of reflection, thinking back to how the podcast got to this point. And after several interviews and really practice of getting the reps of speaking into a microphone, it's made me think about all of the influences that I've had and where this kind of passion came from for me to wanting to speak and speak to a large audience, even though that audience might not be in front of me. But podcasting is something that's been a huge part of my life. And although I'm just recently getting into it, it's the people that I've listened to that have kind of shaped and molded into how the BTB project is done. As you can tell, my interview style when I have guests is very conversational. I really try to do my best to make it as if it's just me and that person in a room, and you and the listener get to dive into our conversation. I do my best with preparations, researching who I'm talking to, developing a list of questions, presenting that list of questions to the person that I'm going to talk to. But I typically almost never follow through with the structure of questions that I'm asking. And I almost feel like that's a little bit on purpose, because how I've operated in my life, especially with my coaching background and the conversations that I've had and the motivational opportunities that I've had, it's almost impossible to develop a very general sense of framework, but you certainly don't have this word by word script of what to say or how to say it. I think you lose a lot of authenticity and ability to connect with people, which I hope you as a listener have felt connected to, because I'm really looking to strive to introduce topics and have conversations about what I know each and every one of you are experienced or have experienced in the past. So with that said, this list is in no particular order, but I want to introduce you to who I believe are some of the best in the business when it comes to motivational speaking, words of wisdom, health, fitness, mindset, discipline, entrepreneurship. The list goes on and on. And the first one that comes to mind is a gentleman by the name of Bilyeu. Tom Bilyeu has a podcast called Impact Theory. And for those of you who do not know Tom, he was one of the co-founders of Quest Nutrition, which is those little energy bars you can get at GNC or King Soopers. And that company became widely known not only for its protein bars and health-conscious snacks, but under his leadership, Quest Nutrition grew to a valuation of almost $1 billion. And he ended up selling Quest Nutrition, of which then allowed him to reallocate those funds into Impact Theory. And the podcast is basically an interview of a wide range of influential guests, very similar to the BTB project, entrepreneurs, athletes, thought leaders, and personal growth mindset and success strategies are always the main topic of his conversations. And what I found so fascinating about Tom is his whole passion is around his influence with Disney growing up. And he was just so enamored with how Disney captivated the mind of children and the curiosity and the storytelling. And Impact Theory is not only a platform for his passion for children, but he also has that drive to essentially make a product that is in the form of comic books that allows him to speak to children with the motivational words of wisdom, with his life teachings in that comic form to impact, 12 to 17. And I think that's tremendous. Coming from a coaching background, coming from youth coaching, those are just vital times for kids to be able to be tapped into. As coaches, as mentors, we are tremendous seed planters in those moments of life. And it's incredibly important to make sure that we're shaping them in the right way, whether it's a coach, as a parent, any aspect of life. I just deeply respect Tom for what he's doing. I highly suggest going to check out Impact Theory. The second one is by far one of the most dynamic speakers I've ever seen in my life. I remember coming across his YouTube video. This had to have been 9-10 years ago. And his name is Eric Thomas. They call him E.T. the hip hop preacher. And this guy has just an incredible story. Formerly being homeless, being abandoned by his parents, sleeping in alleys, eating out of trash cans. And somehow, some way, through those homeless and academic struggles, he inspires and motivates audiences to reach their full potential. And when I mean academic struggles, this guy went from homeless to not graduating high school to going back to school, getting his undergrad at Michigan State, and eventually getting his doctorate at Michigan State. And this YouTube video that I'm talking about, the message is essentially, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you will be successful. I'm going to say that one more time. When you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you will be successful. And I believe a lot of times in life, we feel like we're maxed out. We feel like we are at our wits' end with potential or understanding. And from there, we always try to figure out, how can we go up? What's the next step? It's very challenging to find that inner depth of what we're capable of. And Eric does an outstanding job of not only speaking very eloquently, but he speaks very powerfully, incredibly authentic, man of faith. And now a lot of his mission is catered towards nonprofits and going back to schools and speaking to kids. From what I understand, a lot of his engagements, he's not paid for. That when he offers his time to give back to high schools or inner city children, he speaks just to speak. And I think that's tremendously impactful. The next guest is a lady by the name of Mel Robbins. And she's, again, another highly regarded motivational speaker. She's an author, has her own podcast. And Mel, what I like about her is she was able to really dive into this concept of the 5-second rule. And it's a simple technique to overcome hesitation and take action. She's very good at insight, strategies, dynamic interviews, and helps her listeners improve their lives. The podcast that she has typically covers a wide range of topics, including motivation, productivity, relationships, and personal growth. And she also has a best-selling book, again, that 5-second rule. And what that is basically a practical guidance on how to overcome self-doubt, make decisions, and take action. I talk often on the BTB project about taking action because I've seen how inaction, overthinking can cripple opportunity. And it's something that I don't like to see in my own life, let alone see and hear about in the listeners' lives. And Mel, too, is just a dynamic speaker. I mean, she really knows how to bring the fire. And she's always speaking at various events, conferences, organizations. And, you know, she's highly advocated by folks like Tony Robbins and other huge influences. That just shows how highly respected she is. The next up is another powerful influence in my life. He's helped me on numerous occasions with how to set up podcasts, how to structure podcasts, how to, really have the discipline to continue to bring out episodes each and every week. And that gentleman's name is Dominic Schleter. He has a podcast called The Running Effect. And The Running Effect is a podcast that is focused on storytelling of really the sport of running. And as you guys know, my son is an avid runner, and I got introduced to his podcast a few years back, and it just talks about the stories of these athletes. I mean, some of the things and the times that these runners are putting down is unbelievable. And to be able to showcase that, Dominic has done such a fantastic job of taking something that he is passionate about. And what's fascinating is that this young man just graduated high school. So most of the podcasting he's done it as a high school kid. And we're talking multiple episodes a week. Started it with basically his iPhone and a cheap, USB mic that he plugged into it, and started reaching out to folks on LinkedIn, started having conversations that led to interviews, that led to second interviews. And it's one of the top 25 podcasts in the country related to sports. And he's been so gracious to give me kind of the insights and words of wisdom that he's learned throughout his experience. And I highly suggest going to check out The Running Effect. Next up is a gentleman by the name of Ed Mylett. Ed Mylett is an author, entrepreneur, multiple business owner. He has a book out right now called The Power of One More. I deeply, deeply respect Ed Mylett. His interview style, he also has his own short form version of a podcast where it's a motivational tip and or strategy each and every week, where he's basically like bringing you into his office and speaking to you on a lot of different topics. And I just resonate with his humility, his empathy, his ability to be stern when he needs to. He just has an unbelievable speaking style. And most importantly, his father was also an alcoholic, very similar to my mom. And he recently lost his dad a little over a year ago. And the Power of One More is tied to kind of the AA programs and recovery and his dad's advice when he became sober, which he was sober for several years before he passed, was each and every day was an opportunity. Each and every day that he was sober allowed him to help and impact other people. And I just find that so encouraging and so refreshing based off of some of the things that have happened in my life. Highly suggest going to check out Ed Mylett's podcast. I promise you will not be disappointed. And I could keep going down the list, but the last one I want to share on today's episode is a gentleman by the name of Jay Shetty. Jay Shetty has a podcast called On Purpose, and he is a incredible YouTuber, does a lot of short form films that are tied to topics that we see each and every day in the world. And I think he does a great job of resonating with young audiences and is being able to capture his journey into not only those short form films, but his podcast has a tremendous reach. He has interviewed literally, I think, every, movie star, musician, folks that you don't typically get to really truly learn to understand outside of their craft. And he just has a very soft spoken way to disarm his guests, to have these really awesome conversations. And he comes from a unique background because he spent a few years of his life as a Buddhist monk, and he has learned a lot of traits and values through the Buddhist monk culture that he's taken back into today's day and age and being in the real world, and how some of those practices and principles have helped him today. Highly suggest going to check out Jay Shetty On Purpose. And listeners, this is just a brief subset of some of the folks that have impacted me on the podcast side. And I suggest going to check out all of them. I'll make sure that each and every one of these individuals is listed in the podcast description. And I want you as the listener to think about some of the influences or people that have impacted your life. I'd love for you to share them with me, whether it's a podcast or a book or motivational speech, TED Talk, anything that comes to mind. Let me know what is motivating you, because at the end of the day, the BTB project is about community. It's about coming together to accomplish our goals, to make the commitment to ourselves each and every day that impossible is nothing, and to just chip away at life to get 1% better each and every day. And I know that as we continue the project podcast, that we're going to impact lives and that we're going to become the strongest version of ourselves. Continue to find those 5 to 6 people that will encourage you, that will be part of your path to where you want to go. Put yourself around them, keep them close, and do it in community. Thanks for checking out the episode, and take care.
You're told I'll be a harder temptation.